Hi, I'm Alex Kevion. I cover the Ottawa 67's for InTheORadio.com. Of course, the Ottawa 67's currently taking part in the OHL playoffs, the first round of the playoffs. They're currently playing the 7th seeded Belleville Bulls. For this series, Phil Phillips is going to be doing the game reviews. He's already done his game reviews for the first two games, doing a very good job of that. So instead, I'm going to be doing video reviews. And we've just finished games 1 and 2. Ottawa does have a 2-0 series lead. So I'll start with Game 1, where Tyler Toffoli had the game-winning goal in overtime. Ottawa wins Game 1, 3-2. He does exactly what he did all year. He scored in overtime. He also had the first goal of the game, lifting a backhander over Malcolm Subban. Right away, Luke Judson ties the game at 1, and they head to the dressing room tied. Second period, Stephen Janes having a bit of a rough game, or a rough period at the time. Struggled on the power play and took a penalty. A controversial call, but I'll get to the officiating in a minute because it was a pretty big issue in Game 1 and 2. But he comes out of the penalty box, a shot from the point from Mark Zanetti. Stephen Janes puts it home. It's 2-1 Ottawa. Now this is where Malcolm Subban, in my opinion, completely took over the game. He stops 4 or 5 shots in close on, in a wild scramble in the goal mouth. And back the other way comes Belleville, and Adam Payerl makes Ottawa pay Earl. But no, seriously, a goal that Peter Mrazek would probably love to have back. Shortly after that, with the game 2-2, of course, Malcolm Subban standing on his head, as he did all night, stops Taylor Fielding on a breakaway and then on a penalty shot right after. And not a lot of action in the third period. The two teams, pretty close game. There were a total of 10 shots, I believe, in the third period between the two teams. Over time, the teams opened up a bit. Stephen Janes blocks a shot at the point. Toffoli goes in all alone. Backhand forehand around Malcolm Subban, and that's the game. I'll start because I mentioned this earlier, the officiating. I don't have a problem with lenient officiating. I sort of have a problem with tough, hard officiating, but not really. It's consistency that's the problem. Toffoli's first goal of the game on a power play that shouldn't have been a power play. Right after that, Tchaikovsky goes off to the box for a cross-check. The first one, Dalton Smith gets the stick knocked out of his hands. That must have happened about 10 more times throughout the first two games, no penalty. And the Tchaikovsky, just a little shot from behind, there must have been 20 of those in the last two games that they didn't call. So it's just the consistency I have a problem with, and this is Ottawa-Belleville. There's a long playoff history here, and a long playoff history of bad officiating, as many Belleville and Ottawa fans will attest to, back when Pat Smola was a prominent referee in the Ontario Hockey League, and both fan bases seem to despise him equally. Just one of many officials, and I don't know if they're letting the games get out of hand. We'll discuss that in a minute, but there has to be some more consistency because this isn't pleasing to either fans. Game 1 was on Thursday night. 67's aren't used to Thursday nights. As I said, no atmosphere in the building whatsoever. The announced attendance was 4,700. I don't think there were that many people there. The problem was last year when Ottawa lost to Sudbury. Well, there were a lot of problems, but one of them was home ice advantage. Game 1 was played out in Canada, which apparently is going to be our home now. Game 2 and 3 were in Sudbury. So Ottawa was down 3-0 in the series before they even played a home game. No home ice advantage. I figured that would change this year, but it was the same in Game 1. Empty building, quiet building, no home ice advantage. But Game 2, 8,765 fans, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, but it's in that vicinity. Much better performance, and I'm going to talk about Game 2 in a second. The third thing, and I'm going to mention this isn't really an issue per se, I'm just going to bring it up because I noticed it before the game, and it ties into Game 2. A lot of you will already know what I'm talking about, the pre-game jousting. Now, here's the thing with the Civic Centre. Both teams come out the same entrance behind the Ottawa net. During the World Juniors in 2009, they played the B division at Scotiabank Place, at Civic Centre. The player, and I don't know if they did this because it was safer, because they figured that fans wouldn't try and attack random European kids. Maybe they're afraid they're going to attack players if they're right there. But they would walk around behind the glass to get to the dressing room. Again, there's a really short rail there, the fans could reach over and whatever. But something has to change because the way these guys are getting off the ice just isn't safe. They have to skate around the end of the ice, curl around while guys are taking shots, and that almost boiled over on Thursday night during Game 1. Mark Zanetti fires a puck at one of the Belleville players. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but some mouthing goes on. Luke Judson comes in, bumps him. nothing happened in the game, really. There wasn't much rough stuff. The fact is, it may have carried over because Game 2, now we're talking about Game 2, Friday night, and Zanetti involved again. Just 2.5 minutes into the pregame warm-up, we're not even in the game yet, Mark Zanetti and Steven Silas get into a jousting contest. Zanetti gets his stick up. They called him for a spear. In a regular game, I don't know if they'd call it a spear. He was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do. He was trying to push him off or whatever. So he gets the match penalty in the pregame warm-up for spearing. All the Belleville players were across the Ottawa blue line, or red line rather. They were on Ottawa's side of the ice, and Ottawa was the ones that had to back up. The linesmen pushed them back. That was 2.5 minutes into the warm-up. Again, with 5 minutes left in the warm-up, they gather again at center ice. Jason Shaw and another Belleville Bull, I couldn't tell who it was, were both... they were right at center ice. They weren't warming up. Everybody was warming up. These two were just standing there yapping at the 67's and another gathering of the clans. This is before the game even starts, so right away you know there's going to be some bad blood. More bad blood, and this was the second time it happened. I forgot to mention it in Game 1. It happened with Dalton Smith and I think Brady Austin, but don't quote me on that. It was one of the Bulls' tougher players. The same thing happened this game with Joseph Cramarosa and Tyler Grayovac. Again, I don't like complaining about the officials, but it let the guys play. Like, these guys are trying to fight each other, and the linesmen are standing there in between. You know, Cramarosa's firing uppercuts underneath the linesman, and Grayovac's trying to get in. David Branch is trying to take out premeditated fights, right? So what happens right after that? Dalton Smith fights Adam Payerl right off of a face-off. So you don't want them fighting premeditated, but you don't want them fighting in the heat of the moment either. That's the message I'm getting from this. So I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that if there's any bad blood, it gets settled with the gloves off and not in jousting contests like with Silas and Zanetti. Anyways, on to the actual game. This is all a complete side story. Brett Gustafson, inspirational story, all that. He scores 2.5 minutes into the game, and it's 1-0 Ottawa. Once again, Ottawa couldn't hold the lead. They couldn't put them away early. Michael Curtis ties the game at 1 less than 3 minutes later, but before the first period is out, Sean Monahan, who was criticized a fair amount by Ottawa fans on Thursday night, comes through, scores his first of the playoffs, and it's 2-1 Ottawa heading into the dressing room. Cramarosa and Daniel Zharkov as well, you gotta keep your eye on those two, because they're trying to get into the skin of the Ottawa players. At the same time, you know, Ottawa's coming out and playing as physical hockey I've seen all year, and I don't know if that's ordered from the coaching staff, but I haven't seen them play this physical since they played against the Quebec Ramparts in the first preseason game. So it's good to see for Ottawa fans that that this team is playing to one of their strengths, which is supposedly their physical play. That's what Chris Byrne wanted this year. He wanted a rough and tumble team, and it looks like he has it. Sean Monahan in the third period, just 5 minutes in, a bit of a deflating goal for Belleville. He pots his second of the game, and it's 3-1, sorry. Joseph Cramarosa, who I just mentioned, brings Belleville back within 1, makes it 3-2, but that's as close as Belleville would get. Prince finally puts it away, empty netter, and that's all she wrote. Ottawa wins 4-2, and they take a 2-0 series lead into Belleville tomorrow afternoon. For Ottawa, they're not blowing out Belleville like they did a few times this year. That's really not a concern. You're getting playoff wins, you're shutting them down late, and that's, as long as they keep shutting them down late in games, that's all Chris Byrne or the fans can ask for. I'll be there with the 67's Booster Club in Belleville tomorrow afternoon, so very much looking forward to that game. Hope it's just as exciting. As for Belleville, I mean, they have so many players that are playing well. Brendan Gauntz, Steven Silas, Luke Judson are playing really well. And as I mentioned, you got guys like Zharkov and Cramarosa who, if this series goes a fair amount longer, they'll keep getting under the skin of the 67's. That'll be really effective. And as I mentioned, that's not even counting possibly their best player, Malcolm Subban. The problem for Belleville is that they haven't won in Ottawa since 2008. Again, credit to Phil Phillips for finding that stat. So even if they do win these 2 games in Belleville, they're still, it's not going to be easy for them. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but they're in a pretty good position right now, up 2-0 on the Belleville Bulls. I'll be in Belleville tomorrow. The 67's will be in Belleville on Tuesday as well for Game 4. After those 2 games, I will do a review up to that point. We'll see if the series is over. I don't think it will be, but it's entirely possible. But thank you very much for watching. I'm Alex Kevion for In the O. Thanks again.